Welcome to Jammin' with Jason Mefford, a show where we discuss topics relevant to chief audit executives and professionals in audit, risk, and compliance. We discuss the technical and soft skills needed to navigate the minefields of organizations. You hear best practices and practical advice for helping you advance your career, and we'll even talk about music, mindfulness, and psychology, because we can. So sit back and relax while you listen to the #1 podcast in the world for internal auditors, unscripted and unedited. Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, my friends, welcome back. It is good to be with you again this week. Hey, this week I want to talk about networking. And I'm going to explain here in just a minute why I'm talking about that and why this episode is actually titled Networking is for Salespeople. But before I get into that, just because of a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now. So we know that there's a pandemic with coronavirus that is starting to impact people all over the world. So I didn't want to ignore, the big elephant in the room. And so before we get into our regular discussion today, I want to talk to you a little bit about that and some of the impacts that you may be feeling from this, but also some of the things that you can do. So this week's episode, the show notes are going to be a little bit longer than normal. Because I'm going to go through and talk about a few things, and I want to make sure that you have links so that you can access some of these resources as well. So this week, don't just listen, but actually go into the show notes and click on the links and get yourself some help. Okay. So, depending on where you're at in the world, this coronavirus pandemic is probably affecting you in different ways. But I know here in Los Angeles, where I live, we've gotten to the point now where a lot of schools are actually closing. They're banning kind of large group gatherings. So a lot of events are being canceled as well. And I know this, how does this affect you? Well, obviously, if you have children, if the schools end up closed where you're at, if you are starting to work maybe from home because your office has actually closed and they've actually asked you to stay at home, this is going to start to change kind of your daily or weekly routine that you have. Okay. Now, just as I said, schools are closing. As a result, there's been a lot of training and conferences that have actually been canceled as well. So even this week coming to you, the GAM conference from IIA, that's a big event where a lot of audit management and chief audit executives, end up going to that conference each year. Well, it's been canceled. The live event in Las Vegas has been canceled. They're still trying to do some virtual stuff, but they're scrambling on that here at the last minute. So, as an example, if you were going to the GAM conference, all of a sudden you have a free week because you physically can't be there. And unless you're tuning in virtually, you're not getting the information. Okay. Now, I know I've seen that too with, local IIA chapters and other people that are doing live training. They're canceling that training, which means, again, if you're one of those people that was relying on going to one of these live trainings, for a couple of different reasons, to be able to get your CPE, get trained, get some ideas for how you can change or do things differently, or even just to kind of network. And we're going to get back to that. Remember, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But let me get through first these couple of other items as well. So if you're one of those people that is, find yourself right now going, oh man, how am I going to get my training? What am I going to do? Well, I got some very good news for you. Okay. I saw things like this coming many years ago. That's why 4 years ago, I started C Risk Academy. Now, C Risk Academy is the largest on-demand webinar and certification training platform for internal auditors. So thousands of people go through our training each month, and it's established. It's already there. We're not scrambling like everybody else is to try to start switching from in-person to virtual. We saw this going on for a long time, and so we have hundreds of courses that are out there and available for you to be able to take from the comfort of your home, office, wherever you happen to be. It's completely virtual, so there's no coronavirus risk with C Risk Academy, okay? So one of the links that I have down below for you is, again, if you find yourself in that situation where you're like, oh man, how am I gonna get my training this year? Since everything is getting canceled, C Risk Academy may be exactly the right thing for you. So down below, I've got links where you can sign up, you can register for a free account, and then you just select or pick the training that works for you. So like I said, search through the hundreds of courses, find out what information you need, and get registered. You only pay for what you actually use. And here's something that we do different too. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So most online training providers do not provide that. We do. So again, there's no coronavirus risk. There's also no risk of getting a bad course, okay? And we're actually, actively bringing on new instructors because we're trying to have some of the best internal audit risk and compliance instructors on the platform providing their training. So again, check out that link down below. Now, because of the time, too, I'm going to tell you about a special offer on C Risk Academy right now. There's a new certification course that we have called the Certified Total Quality Auditor. Now, this is a certification course that you can get in 1 to 2 weeks, and it teaches you the principles of total quality auditing. Okay, so it's an actual topical, practical thing for you to be able to improve the quality of your internal audit department. So in how you do it as an individual auditor, but also how you as your whole team can actually improve the quality of the assurance that you're giving. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is we just launched this at the beginning of the month. And right now you can save $500 on this course if you register before the end of March. So if that's something that is of interest to you, don't miss out on saving $500. Get registered for that before the end of the month. And again, I've got that link for you down below that'll take you right to the course. The coupon is already applied. All you have to do is go ahead and register and pay. The next thing, again, if you are a chief audit executive or maybe somebody who reports directly to the CAE, you're kind of that number 2 level in a bigger audit organization. I know a lot of you were planning to go to GAM this year. Many of you cannot travel and cannot go to GAM. So there again, that once in a year opportunity is now gone, okay? But there are other options. Again, I told you, I've been seeing things like this coming for a long time. That's why I facilitate what's called the Chief Audit Executive Forum. The CAE Forum is actually a group of top chief audit executives from all over the world. We meet virtually each month. So it's not oh my goodness, I only get to go once a year. You actually get to meet with top chief audit executives once a month. But it also provides you a whole bunch of other benefits and things that I can't get into here. But again, I've got a link down below for that. Part of that includes actually having some personal one-on-one time with me each month as needed, and really having me in your corner. So again, I don't do much one-on-one coaching. Most of the coaching that I do with chief audit executives is done within the Chief Audit Executive Forum. Excuse me. So again, if you're one of those people that are missing out on GAM, here's another option for you. But it's not just a couple of days once a year. It's actually support for you throughout the year. As I said, in these group calls, there's other courses and information that kind of get included with this. And so if that sounds like exactly something that you are looking for, click on the link down below and fill out a very brief application so that you and I can have a 30-minute discussion to see if the Chief Audit Executive Forum is for you. It's no obligation. You don't have to, it's not a pushy sales call or anything like that, because I only want people in the group that want to be in the group. And so we get on the call for a half an hour. We talk about what you're trying to accomplish, see if this would be a good fit for you. If it is, then we get you registered and get you into that so that you can have that support throughout the year. So that's another option. Again, like I said, if GAM's getting canceled, maybe if your local IIA chapter has CAE roundtables, they're going to get canceled too, right? But the Chief Audit Executive Forum does not. We do not cancel it. It's virtual, and so you have an opportunity to participate and get that support throughout the year as well. Now, it's an actual community. And I'm gonna talk to you later about networking as we get further into this, and you're going to start to see the difference between networking and actually having a community. So the Chief Audit Executive Forum is a community, okay? And hold on, I'll explain to you what that is. Now, the last thing on this area as well is some of you may be looking at this, and again, people on your team, you had scheduled to go to certain training during the year. And again, as I told you, a lot of IIA chapters are canceling their trainings. A lot of in-person conferences, summits, and seminars are being canceled as well. So you may be sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to get my people trained this year? Again, I've known about this for a long time, folks. So at Mefford Associates, we have been doing virtual training for internal audit groups for years. So again, this is not something that we're trying to scramble at the last minute to figure out how to do this for people. We have been doing this for years. And so there are lots of different virtual training options for you and your team, either through C-Risk Academy and kind of an on-demand format, but also in live virtual options for you and your team. So again, if you're one of those people that's thinking, my goodness, how am I going to get this training done that we were thinking to do this year? Again, down below, there is a link. And if that is exactly something that sounds like what you are needing, there is a link for you to set up a short 15-minute call with me just to go over and talk about what you're trying to accomplish and what the best virtual options would be for you and your team. So again, if you're somebody in that situation, you're like, yep, that's what I need. Again, down below, there is a link for you to be able to just have a quick call with me, see what the different options are. Okay, I told you these show notes, there's going to be a lot more down below. So make sure that you go and take a look at the show notes, because links to all of these things that I've just talked to you about are going to be down there. And so again, regardless of which platform you're on, you should see them. If you don't for some reason, then you can always go to my website, jasonmefford.com/jamming with Jason, and you're going to get all of the complete show notes on my website. So nothing gets truncated there. All of the information will be there. Okay, so now let's switch over to what I wanted to talk to you today about, which is networking. And the reason that I bring this up is I hear a lot of internal auditors saying or talking about networking. Okay, now let me explain to you what networking actually is. Okay, there's some different groups, and I'll use some examples because For example, there's a group called BNI, which I think is Business Networking International or something like that. It's usually a local group of business owners who meet each month, and they get to know each other, and they kind of send referrals back and forth to each other. It is a networking group. Now, if you've ever gone to a BNI meeting, and I've been to several, you go, and it is a networking event. You are going looking for sales leads, people that you can sell services to. Okay. You may be going to look for some providers of services that you need to buy, but for the most part, people go to networking events to try to find sales leads. They're looking for people that they want to sell product or services to. Okay. So when you go to a networking event, everybody in the room, what do you think they're thinking? Oh, if I talk to this Jason, is he going to be somebody I can sell something to? So when, Joe comes up to Jason and says, "Hey, Jason, I'm Joe," what's going to be on Joe's mind? How can I find out quickly if Jason is somebody I can sell to? And the discussion is going to be tailored around whether or not I think Jason is a prospect and I can sell something to him. If it's not, Joe's not going to talk to me for very long. He's going to shake my hand. He's going to ask me a couple of questions. And if he doesn't think I'm an ideal client for him, he's going to move on to someone else very quickly. So in networking events, you normally do not really establish relationships other than, shaking hands with people, getting to recognize people's faces, and knowing what people do for a living. That's it, because you're trying to sell to them. Okay. You're not trying to get to know them as a person. You're just trying to sell them something. Okay. Now, even some other events where there is an educational component to it. So think of things like IIA chapter meetings, or one that I'll talk about is the National Speakers Association, which is a group, it's an organization here in the United States of professional speakers. So again, we meet, 8 times a year, something like that. And usually, again, the format is, there's time for people to quote unquote network at the beginning and at the breaks and things like that. And then there's a little educational component to it. So meetings like that, there's an educational component and there's a networking component. Now, if the education is something you're interested in, if it's something that you need for your business, then it's great, right? Because it's education, you're learning, you can make changes, you can do things different. And so the educational component can be great. The networking side, like I said, even though it's an association group, most of the people, as they're talking with other people during those events, it's just like those BNI meetings. They're looking for or trying to find people that they can sell stuff to. And so usually the conversations are very superficial. And superficial conversations do not actually lead to relationships. And you know what I'm talking about, okay? I want you to sit there and think about some event that you've gone to, and somebody walks up to you and they start, "Hey, I'm Jason, what's your name?" And about the first question they ask is, "So what do you do?" Right? And they ask you maybe a couple of questions, and then all of a sudden, either they get very disinterested in you and they leave, or they start on kind of this sales pitch to you. And you probably feel a little sick to your stomach and you're thinking, "My goodness, what are you trying to do?" Right? We don't even know each other and you're already trying to sell me something. Well, folks, that's what networking usually is. And so when I hear internal auditors saying things like, "Well, I already get networking," it just kind of blows my mind, okay? Because as the title says, networking is for salespeople. If you are trying to sell something, then go to networking events, okay? Get all your networking that you can get. But I'm pretty sure that most of you in internal audit, risk, and compliance, You're not trying to sell people things when you go to certain events. But if you're going to networking events, that's what everybody else is trying to do. Either you're the target or you're trying to sell to somebody else. So networking for internal auditors doesn't make a lot of sense. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's why I say networking is for salespeople. Internal auditors don't need networking. What internal auditors need is a community. Okay. And again, I know some of the local chapters kind of try to do this, but here's the issue. Most of the time when we show up to those kind of events, we act like it's a networking event. And so we do the same thing. We have seen this, kind of mimicked to us in going to these kind of events. Excuse me. The discussions end up being fairly superficial, and we never actually develop a relationship with the other person. You have to get deeper in understanding, getting to know them better. I've talked about the principles of influence before, going through some of those kind of steps, but actually trying to get to know people as a human being. That's part of what you need to be able to develop the relationships and be able to have a community. Now, I told you before about the Chief Audit Executive Forum, and I told you it is not networking, it is a community. And I don't know how many times I have heard people say this to me. Okay, they'll hear the concept and they'll say something like, "Well, I don't need to pay for networking. I have a bunch of free networking already." Well, good for you. But as I told you before, networking is not what you need. You need a community. And for a community to actually, be there and kind of go forward so that it can always support you, there are costs that go along with that, folks. Okay. And you can see this already. Any organization that just relies on volunteers cannot sustain itself for very long. And so again, I know many of you are involved in local IIA chapters, and I'm going to give this to you as an example. Okay. Now, I used to be a chapter president myself. I was also a district representative, so I was responsible for different chapters around the U.S. I've served on lots of IIA international committees as well. Okay, so I understand what it's like to run a chapter, and local chapters are relying on volunteers. Okay, and that's why so many chapters struggle, because they're relying on volunteers. They're not really charging, or they're charging a very small amount. And so financially, they always have some difficulties. Okay. They rely on big events like my local chapter, their 2-day event that they rely on for a lot of their money for the year just got canceled, which means financially it's going to be difficult for them this next year. Now, the other thing with these free groups is because they don't have a lot of money, or because they're charging very little for people to be able to participate, the educational side of it often is lacking. They rely on somebody who maybe is not an expert, works for a professional service firm that wants to come in and network with you. So they'll give you a free, they won't charge you to talk for an hour, but they're going to talk about the services that they want to sell to you. And they're going to use that as an opportunity to try to find sales leads, because those people from the professional service firms that show up are usually salespeople. Okay. So they're using those chapter meetings as a way to actually find sales prospects. So that's why when you go to some of the events, the title looks great. You show up and you're like, that kind of sucked. Okay. And a lot of times it does. Some of it's very good. Some of it's okay. Some of it just sucks. And the reason is because it's free or practically free. Anything that is free or practically free will not have a high quality aspect to it. Why? Because you know what? The professional speakers, the people that actually really know their stuff, they do this for a living. And would you expect an expert, a world-class expert, to want to work for free? Do you want to do your job for free? Now, everybody should have said no, right? So again, if you want to have higher quality, you can get all the free stuff that you want, free networking, free quote unquote community. It just isn't going to be there for very long, because what typically happens is those people that volunteer their time, they get burned out, or they move on to another organization. They can no longer end up helping out. That's why those things tend to really struggle or burn out and just not end up happening. The Chief Audit Executive Forum, as I told you, is not networking. It is a community, okay? And it's run by and supported by a team of people. That takes some money to do, but you know what? The quality is higher as well. So you get what you pay for. So if you're one of those people that ends up saying, oh, I don't need to pay for networking, I get plenty of free networking. Well, guess what? You're getting a whole bunch of free value, and free usually does not equal value. Okay. So again, as internal auditors, you don't need networking. You need a community, and you need to be able to find a place that becomes a community for you. Because here's the difference between networking and community, when it really comes down to it. When you go to a lot of those meetings and you're just talking superficial chit chat BS with people, if you have a problem, if you need something, if you have a question, there's a very good chance those people will not be there to support you when you need help. If you are a part of a community where you actually develop relationships with people, they know who you are, you know who they are. When you have a problem, when you have a question, when you need something, those people will be there for you. That's the big difference between networking and just superficial versus actually being a part of a community. Okay, you got it? If you didn't, go back and listen to this episode again. But like I said, folks, in internal audit, risk, and compliance, you don't need networking, you need a community. And so quit trying to network and instead try to join things that are actually a community to be able to help you grow and learn as an individual, but also to be able to have that group of people there when you need something and when the other people need something, that you're there for them as well. A community is both a give and take. And so again, if you're only a taker, if you only want people to answer your questions, but you're not there to support other people, then a community probably isn't for you, and you probably should work on, do some soul searching, people. If you're only a taker, then that sucks. Okay. But if you really want to be a part of a community, actually give and take, that's what a community does, then go out and find that. Because like I said, networking is not what you need. You need a community. So with that, my friends, I'm going to sign off this week. Make sure again, because at the beginning of this, I told you a whole bunch of stuff, and all the links for that are down below in the show notes. So with that, stay safe, and I'll talk to you next week on the next episode of Jamming with Jason. See ya. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Jamming with Jason. Keep on rocking in the audit world. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on the next show. If you'd like to earn continuing professional education for listening to today's episode, head on over to C-Risk Academy at ondemand.criskacademy.com. And that's C as in the letter C, riskacademy.com. Not only do you get a CPE certificate, but you also will have access to the video version of today's show. The views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.